What would drive a grandmother to commit the unthinkable? In a quiet neighborhood, behind closed doors, a twisted secret was brewing. A secret that would lead to a brutal and unimaginable crime. The love between a grandmother and her grandson crossed every boundary, shocking not just their family but an entire community. This is the story of how a forbidden affair turned into a grisly murder. Meet Evelyn Gray, a 60-year-old grandmother who was the epitome of warmth and generosity in her community. Known for her kind heart and unwavering dedication to her family, Evelyn was the matriarch everyone admired. Her home was a sanctuary of love and stability, or so it seemed. Now, enter Jason Walker, her 24-year-old grandson. Recently moving in with Evelyn after a challenging period in his life, Jason was seen as a bright and promising young man. With his charming demeanor and hopeful ambitions, he seemed to be starting a new chapter. But behind the surface of their seemingly affectionate relationship lay a dangerous and forbidden bond. Together, Evelyn and Jason's relationship was more complex and sinister than anyone could have imagined. What started as a seemingly innocent family connection would spiral into a dark and shocking tale of passion and murder. The discovery of Jason Walker's body was nothing short of a nightmare. In the dimly lit living room of Evelyn Gray's home, a scene of horror unfolded. The room, once a place of warmth and comfort, was now a crime scene shrouded in darkness and blood. Jason was found lifeless on the floor, his body sprawled in a disturbing and unnatural position. The surrounding area was eerily quiet, save for the chilling silence that now filled the room. Evidence of a violent struggle was scattered about. The overturned furniture, a blood-stained rug, and shattered family photos telling a story of a brutal confrontation. The most unsettling detail was the blood-red handkerchief clutched tightly in Jason's hand, a sinister clue that hinted at a personal and intense struggle. The walls bore the marks of desperation and fear, with smudges and streaks of blood adding to the macabre tableau. As investigators arrived, they were met with a scene that defied explanation. The evidence seemed to point to an intimate knowledge of the victim's habits and vulnerabilities. The chilling atmosphere and the gruesome nature of the crime left the authorities and the community grappling with one question. How could such a horrific act be committed by someone so close to the victim? Evelyn Gray and her 24-year-old grandson, Jason Walker, shared a bond that seemed perfect to outsiders. Evelyn, a beloved community figure, was known for her warmth and hospitality, and Jason, fresh out of college, had recently moved in with her. Their days were filled with close companionship, mornings over coffee and evenings of shared laughter and stories. To those who knew them, their relationship was a model of family devotion. Evelyn was proud of Jason's achievements, and Jason deeply appreciated Evelyn's support. However, beneath this seemingly ideal connection lay a darker reality. As their lives became increasingly entangled, the boundaries of their relationship began to blur in ways that would eventually lead to a shocking and tragic outcome. Evelyn Gray was a well-respected pillar of her community, known for her dedication to charitable work and her nurturing spirit. She was the type of grandmother who was adored by all, seen as a model of grace and kindness. Her reputation for being a loving and supportive figure made the emerging secrets of her life all the more shocking. Jason Walker, her grandson, was viewed as a bright and promising young man. Fresh out of college and full of potential, Jason was on the cusp of a successful future. His move back to Evelyn's home was seen as a positive step, a chance for him to get back on track with the support of his devoted grandmother. The disturbing revelation that their close relationship had crossed into an illicit affair was not just surprising. It was profoundly unsettling. The contrast between Evelyn's esteemed public persona and the nature of their forbidden relationship made the entire situation even more disturbing. The once admired family dynamic now harbored a dark secret that shattered the very image of their loving bond. At first, Evelyn and Jason's relationship seemed perfectly normal, but over time, small changes started to hint at something deeper and more troubling. Their once casual interactions became more intense. What started as friendly gestures turned into something more intimate. Jason's stays with Evelyn were marked by late-night conversations and private outings, which seemed odd to those around them. Neighbors began to notice a shift. There was a new tension between them, and they started to keep to themselves more. Friends saw that something was different, but couldn't quite figure out what was wrong. These small changes began to uncover a more disturbing side of their relationship. What once seemed like a close family bond was actually hiding a dark secret. The secret affair between Evelyn and Jason began slowly, driven by a mix of loneliness and emotional dependence. After her husband's death, Evelyn had felt increasingly isolated. Although she was active in her community, her home was often empty, and the companionship of her grandson provided a much-needed source of comfort. As Jason moved back in, their close bond became a refuge for both of them. Jason, struggling to find his footing after college, was drawn to the familiarity and support Evelyn offered. Their time together started with casual conversations and shared meals, but soon became more intimate. The lines between family affection and something deeper began to blur. As they spent more time alone together, their emotional connection grew stronger and more complicated. What began as a comforting relationship shifted into a forbidden affair, driven by their mutual feelings of loneliness and need. The once innocent moments of closeness turned into a dark secret, changing their relationship in ways that would soon lead to tragedy. As Evelyn and Jason's relationship grew more intense, the first signs of suspicion began to emerge from those around them. Neighbors started to notice changes in their behavior. Where once Evelyn was always out in the community, she now seemed to stay home more often, rarely inviting others over. The usually open door of her house was now kept shut, and visitors were met with curt replies. Jason's friends observed his increasingly erratic behavior. He would often cancel plans or make excuses to avoid social gatherings. Those who had once seen him as a bright, engaged young man began to notice a shift in his demeanor, a growing tension that was hard to ignore. A few concerned relatives began to question the nature of their closeness. Family gatherings that used to be filled with laughter now felt awkward and strained. The once warm and open interactions between Evelyn and Jason started to seem more private and secretive, raising uncomfortable questions among those who were close to them. These subtle signs of suspicion hinted at a troubling undercurrent. As their relationship continued to evolve behind closed doors, the mounting unease among their family and neighbors grew, setting the stage for the shocking revelations that were to come. The tension reached a boiling point when the affair between Evelyn and Jason was finally uncovered. The discovery was nothing short of explosive, shattering the facade of their seemingly perfect family life. It all started when a family member stumbled upon incriminating evidence, a series of private messages and photos that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. Shock and disbelief quickly gave way to outrage and betrayal. When the truth came to light, the emotional fallout was intense. Evelyn's children, who had once looked up to her as a pillar of strength, were devastated. The realization that their mother had been involved in such a scandalous affair left them reeling. Accusations flew, and heated arguments erupted as family members confronted Evelyn and Jason, demanding answers and grappling with their feelings of betrayal. Jason's friends, who had noticed his strange behavior, were equally shocked. Their disbelief turned to anger as they processed the extent of the deception. They felt manipulated and hurt, struggling to reconcile the Jason they knew with the man who had been hiding such a dark secret. The community, once so trusting of Evelyn, was thrown into turmoil. Gossip and speculation spread like wildfire, amplifying the emotional intensity of the situation. The affair, once a secret hidden behind closed doors, became a public scandal, leaving a trail of emotional wreckage and shattered relationships in its wake. On the day of the murder, the tension in Evelyn's home was at its highest. The air was thick with anger and frustration as the family faced off. The house, usually a place of comfort, was now filled with shouting and harsh words. Evelyn and Jason were at the center of a heated argument with Evelyn's children. The argument grew louder and more intense, with accusations of betrayal and deceit. Evelyn, already overwhelmed, struggled to explain herself while her children vented their anger. Jason, caught in the middle, tried to calm things down but only made the situation worse. As emotions ran high and voices reached a fever pitch, the atmosphere became charged and volatile. The conflict, fueled by raw feelings and unresolved issues, was building up to a tragic and violent confrontation. On that fateful day, the The tension that had been building for weeks finally exploded into violence. The crime took place in the living room of Evelyn's home, the same space that had once been filled with warmth and laughter, but was now the scene of a horrific confrontation. As the argument reached its peak, Evelyn and Jason's heated words turned into a physical struggle. The living room, cluttered with overturned furniture and scattered personal items, became a battleground. In the chaos, Evelyn grabbed a heavy, ornate vase from a nearby table. This was no longer a room of family gatherings. It was a stage for a brutal and desperate fight. Jason, trying to defend himself from Evelyn's furious outburst, was backed into a corner. The argument had become a frenzied altercation, with both of them pushing and shoving. In a moment of explosive anger, Evelyn swung the vase at Jason. The blow struck him with force, causing him to fall to the ground. The room fell silent except for Jason's labored breathing and Evelyn's panicked gasps. Realizing the severity of what she had done, Evelyn's initial shock gave way to a desperate attempt to hide her actions. She quickly tried to clean up the blood and hide the evidence of the struggle, but the damage was done. The scene was one of utter chaos and violence, with the living room now marked by the signs of the fatal struggle. The once peaceful home was transformed into a crime scene, with bloodstains and broken objects telling the story of the tragic final moments between Evelyn and Jason. As the argument between Evelyn and Jason grew violent, the living room became a scene of chaos. After the confrontation, Evelyn tried to clean up the mess, but the damage was already done. Neighbors, sensing something was wrong due to the unusual quiet, decided to check on the house. They found the living room in disarray, with furniture overturned and bloodstains on the carpet. Their unease grew as they searched the house. The horror intensified when they opened Jason's bedroom door. There, they discovered Jason's lifeless body on the floor, marking the room with a chilling silence. The once safe and comforting space had become a crime scene, and the shocking reality of the murder hit hard. The brutality of the act was evident as soon as the body was discovered. Jason's lifeless form lay sprawled on the floor, the result of a violent confrontation. The room was marked by blood and signs of a desperate struggle, with the heavy vase used as a weapon lying nearby. The scene was a stark contrast to the love and warmth that had once defined Evelyn and Jason's relationship. The sheer violence of the act left a chilling impression. How could a grandmother, who was supposed to be a figure of comfort and care, commit such a horrific crime against her own grandson? The brutal nature of the murder left everyone grappling with questions. What drove Evelyn to such an extreme act of violence? Was it a moment of unrestrained rage, or was there something darker at play? The shocking discovery of Jason's body and the evidence of the violent struggle forced everyone to confront the terrifying reality of a love turned deadly. The police investigation began right after the shocking discovery. Detectives Laura Hayes and Mark Rivera arrived at the crime scene, their faces serious as they took in the brutal scene. In the living room, they saw clear signs of a violent struggle: overturned furniture, bloodstains, and the heavy vase used as a weapon. They carefully documented everything. Forensic experts collected evidence, including blood samples and fingerprints from the vase. They searched the room for clues to understand what had happened. As they interviewed neighbors and family members, they learned about the tense atmosphere and the hidden affair between Evelyn and Jason. The detectives pieced together these details, uncovering how a seemingly loving relationship had turned into a tragic and brutal crime. In the days following the murder, Evelyn's behavior was marked by a mix of denial and attempts to cover up the crime. Initially, she seemed numb and disoriented, struggling to come to terms with the enormity of what had happened. Her actions, however, suggested a deeper, more complex response. Evelyn attempted to clean the crime scene, desperately scrubbing away bloodstains and trying to restore order to the chaotic living room. Her frantic efforts to hide the evidence spoke to her deep-seated fear and denial. She avoided eye contact with those around her and became increasingly withdrawn, showing little of her usual warmth. When questioned by the police, Evelyn's responses were often evasive and conflicted. She tried to present a facade of normalcy, but her nervousness and inconsistent statements raised suspicion. At times, she seemed genuinely confused and overwhelmed, as if struggling to reconcile her actions with her perception of herself as a loving grandmother. Her behavior was a complex mix of guilt, fear, and denial, reflecting the psychological turmoil she was experiencing. The contrast between her public persona and her private actions added to the chilling complexity of the case, revealing the deep emotional and mental conflict she faced after the brutal act. As the investigation progressed, the truth about Evelyn became clear. The evidence, fingerprints on the vase, witness statements, and her own erratic behavior pointed directly to her. The detectives were sure she was the killer. When the police came to arrest Evelyn, it was a moment of shock and disbelief. The community and her family couldn't believe that the beloved grandmother, once seen as a pillar of love and strength, was now exposed as the murderer. The arrest revealed a dark and disturbing side to the woman everyone thought they knew. The trial of Evelyn Gray was a dramatic and emotional event, filled with shocking testimonies and unexpected twists. During the trial, family members took the stand, revealing the painful impact of Evelyn's actions. Her children described the intense emotional turmoil they had experienced, torn between their love for their mother and the horror of her crime. Their testimonies were heart-wrenching and raw, exposing the deep scars left by the betrayal. One of the most shocking moments came when a neighbor testified about seeing Evelyn and Jason's increasingly secretive behavior. This testimony provided a chilling glimpse into the hidden dynamics of their relationship and how it had evolved into something far more sinister. The defense tried to argue that Evelyn was in a state of emotional collapse and didn't fully understand her actions. However, the prosecution countered with evidence of premeditation, showing that Evelyn had planned and attempted to cover up the murder. As the trial progressed, Evelyn herself broke down on the stand, her composure unraveling as she faced the reality of her actions. Her emotional collapse added a dramatic layer to the proceedings, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. During the trial, Evelyn Gray's defense was a mix of denial and claims of emotional instability. Her lawyer argued that Evelyn had been overwhelmed by the intense emotions and stress in her life, suggesting that her actions were a result of a crime of passion. They portrayed her as a woman driven to the edge by a complex web of personal and emotional issues. Evelyn herself, while not openly admitting guilt, did express moments of remorse. She often appeared distraught and tearful, struggling to come to terms with what she had done. Her defense team argued that her emotional breakdown had clouded her judgment, painting her as someone who had lost control rather than a cold-blooded killer. In an attempt to mitigate her culpability, the defense also suggested that Evelyn's actions might have been partly influenced by Jason's alleged provocations or threats, although this argument was met with skepticism. The prosecution countered by highlighting Evelyn's attempts to cover up the crime, suggesting that her actions were premeditated and calculated. Overall, Evelyn's defense tried to frame her actions as the result of extreme emotional distress, hoping to sway the jury by presenting her as a tragic figure rather than a deliberate murderer. The trial was a roller coaster of emotions and revelations, making it clear that the crime had shattered more than just the immediate family. It had exposed the dark complexities behind a seemingly loving relationship. As Evelyn Gray's trial unfolded, the drama and tension were palpable both in the courtroom and beyond. Family members were at the center of the emotional storm. Evelyn's children were often seen breaking down in tears as they recounted their pain and betrayal. Their emotional testimonies painted a vivid picture of the family's shattered trust and the deep scars left by the murder. The courtroom was frequently filled with sobs and strained faces as they struggled to come to terms with their mother's actions. Public reaction was equally intense. The media covered the trial extensively, with every detail of the case being broadcasted live. Spectators and reporters gathered outside the courthouse, eagerly discussing the latest developments. The community was divided, with some people expressing sympathy for Evelyn's emotional distress, while others were outraged by the brutality of her crime. The dramatic twists in the trial only heightened the public's fascination. Evelyn's tearful breakdown on the stand was a particularly poignant moment, causing many to question her state of mind and motivations. The courtroom atmosphere was electric, with tension running high as each new piece of evidence and testimony was presented. The trial became a spectacle of raw emotion and conflicting opinions, leaving everyone involved grappling with the profound impact of Evelyn's crime and the deep rift it had created in their lives. After a gripping and emotional trial, the jury delivered their verdict. Evelyn Gray was found guilty of murdering her grandson, Jason. The decision brought a mix of relief and sorrow to the courtroom. Evelyn, visibly shaken, accepted the verdict with a look of despair and resignation, reflecting the gravity of her actions. The judge sentenced Evelyn to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led away in handcuffs, the courtroom fell into a somber silence. The emotional weight of the trial lingered, leaving the family and public to grapple with the finality of the outcome. The verdict provided some closure, but the impact of the case was profound. The family faced the painful task of rebuilding their lives while Evelyn's fate was sealed. The tragic story of the grandmother and grandson left a lasting scar on everyone involved, serving as a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences of hidden secrets and unchecked emotions. The long-term impact of Evelyn Gray's crime was profound for both the family and the community. For her family, the aftermath of the murder was a long and painful journey. The betrayal and loss left deep emotional scars, and the family struggled to rebuild their lives in the shadow of the tragedy. The once close-knit family was fractured, with strained relationships and lingering grief affecting their interactions for years to come. The community, once shocked and captivated by the case, was left to process the horror of what had happened in their midst. Evelyn's crime became a local legend, often discussed in hushed tones and remembered as a dark chapter in their history. The case served as a stark reminder of how hidden secrets and emotional turmoil can lead to unimaginable violence. Over time, the story of Evelyn and Jason became a cautionary tale about the complexities of human relationships and the consequences of unchecked emotions. The event was remembered with a mix of sorrow and disbelief, serving as a sobering example of how quickly a seemingly loving family can be torn apart by deep-seated issues and hidden truths. The tragic story of Evelyn Gray and her grandson, Jason, serves as a chilling reminder of the devastating consequences that can arise from secrets and forbidden relationships. This case highlights how hidden truths, when left unchecked, can fester and grow into something far more destructive than anyone might expect. The betrayal within a family, combined with the intense emotions and secrecy, led to a heartbreaking outcome that forever altered the lives of those involved. It underscores the importance of addressing and resolving underlying issues before they spiral out of control. Ultimately, the story reminds us that the darkness of concealed truths can overshadow even the closest bonds, leading to unimaginable pain and tragedy. It prompts us to reflect on the importance of honesty, communication, and seeking help when facing difficult emotions to prevent such profound and devastating consequences. The tragic story of Evelyn Gray and her grandson, Jason, highlights the devastating consequences that can arise from secrets and forbidden relationships. This case shows how hidden truths can lead to unimaginable pain and tragedy. If this story has moved you, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Your support helps me continue to bring important and thought-provoking content to light. If you have thoughts or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Let's stay informed and engaged, and work together to understand and address the deeper issues behind such tragedies.